A new survey from the Brennan Center for Justice finds 46% of election officials are concerned they could become targets of politically motivated investigations. Earlier, I spoke to CBS News election law expert David Becker and asked for his reaction to this and New York Times reporting of recent vintage that the Trump Justice Department was looking into using criminal charges against state and local election officials.
I think even more importantly, it appears that it's not so much whether the Justice Department thinks they're doing something wrong or aren't adequately protecting election security. It seems like from what the New York Times is reporting, this is about whether the White House wants to target election officials and then the Justice Department is scrambling trying to find some federal law that would justify a prosecution, which there isn't. And I think there are three big things to remember about this. First, as you and I both know from our book, The Big Truth, the 2020 election was the most scrutinized election in world history. And as we sit here 4.5 years after that election, there's still not a shred of evidence has been presented to indicate there was any problem with it, even as defendants in defamation claims were begged to show evidence, people like Carrie Lake and Rudy Giuliani and Mike Lindell and Fox News, still not a shred of evidence. Secondly, we've seen over the first 5 months of this administration completely decimate the cybersecurity infrastructure with regard to elections in this country. So while they might be complaining and looking for some kind of problems that the states might have with regard to election cybersecurity, they're actually ruining the ability of the federal government to assist them in that. And then lastly, our elections are as secure as they've ever been. We have 98% paper ballots in this country. Every place except for the state of Louisiana and a few counties in Texas, we audit those paper ballots. Election officials are doing a great job. And in those rare cases where election officials have actually contributed to a breach of cybersecurity, places like Coffee County, Georgia, or Mesa County, Colorado, that's been done at the behest of Trump and his allies. And he's actually complaining about what's happening there. So this ends up being very twisted. I think the DOJ is going to have a very hard time finding some kind of justification for bringing a criminal case. And if they do, they're going to run into a big problem because there are no laws that will justify it. And then even if they kind of create some justification for it, proving beyond a reasonable doubt that someone committed a crime is going to be very difficult.
David, also in this space, there is new reporting, I believe, from National Public Radio about an effort within the administration to create some sort of citizen database.
Yeah, this is a fascinating story, and it kind of goes back to what we were hearing about DOJ collecting Social Security information, and of course, some of these false claims of widespread non-citizen voting. We know that that's not widespread. We know it's very, very rare. There were only 4 cases that were brought by the Justice Department in the last 6 months. But if they are, in fact, creating a database like this, it should be noted this was something that many lawmakers, particularly Republicans, opposed for a very long time. The idea that Washington could create a national registry of citizens and take power away from the states and create this mass center of data on American citizens was something that a lot of privacy advocates and Republicans, states' rights advocates opposed. And now it's a Republican president doing it. And as Senator McConnell has pointed out, they have to be very careful about creating tools and precedents for a Republican president where he does something they might like, because Democratic presidents will do the same. And so you can imagine there's a national citizen registry that has a list of everyone who's over the age of 18 and a citizen of the United States. While they might use that to find alleged non-citizens who are voting, a president of a different party or a president with different feelings on this matter might use it to just enfranchise everyone who's eligible to vote in the United States. It could be one of the tools to create basically de facto voter registration for every 18-year-old citizen in the United States by a different president.
Be careful the database you might build. One last thing. Senator Charles Grassley, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, has released a statement saying that it has obtained emails from the new FBI leadership about an allegation that came up in 2020 from a field office in Albany about potential Chinese efforts to create thousands upon thousands of phony driver's licenses as a means by which to create mail-in ballots to support Joe Biden. Walk my audience through what that might or might not mean.
Well, this seems to follow a tweet that the FBI Director Kash Patel put out a couple of weeks ago alluding to this. And what it looks like is that the then FBI Director, Christopher Wray, who was appointed by President Trump, had seen this allegation from this one source, and he and others in the FBI viewed this as non-credible. And if you dig into this allegation, you can understand why career FBI agents, even political appointees by President Trump would say, this is just not a very credible allegation. Even if the Chinese were allegedly creating millions of pieces of plastic, fake IDs, which would be a boon to all of the 17-year-olds who want to drink beer, of course, all over the United States. It doesn't create a record in the motor vehicles database or in the voter database. Those people can't get ballots. Every single voter who registers in the United States needs to provide a driver's license number or a social security number, which is checked against a database.
Mail in or in person.
Exactly.
Right.
Not against a piece of plastic. And so there wouldn't be a signature on file, for instance, to check that mail-in ballot against. So it would not have resulted in fraud. It would have been caught right away if someone had tried to use one of these things, these pieces of plastic to register. So this is apparently an effort to raise more questions about an election that has withstood more scrutiny than any election in world history, despite the fact there's absolutely nothing to these claims, even if they're true.
Breaking it down for us always. David Becker, thanks so much.
Thank you, Major.